Glorious. Hello then, everybody. My name is Tim Hills, and I'm here from Inca, an IKEA retailer. And I'd like to talk to you today, or talk with you today, about the momentum that we've been building and how we're moving from working with our business and forming changes and actions within our business to then really be an agent of change to really support the business to be able to change itself. And the area in which we're working with this process mining and with process improvement is in our sales order flow. And this is a hyper-simplified view of our sales order, the stages that are involved. But it already starts to show a little bit of the complexity, and we heard a little bit about this in the keynote speech, right? Of different functions interacting with each other to actually deliver an end-to-end totality. And the way that we're trying to bring this together, to have this common language, this way of interacting with each other, is the creation of what we've then termed the perfect order. So the perfect order, and this is a definition that we're taking from APQC, so a generalized way in which we can then be comparable. And the idea is then, yes, take the order perfectly, fulfill, deliver with the right tax document. And the way in which we manifest this in our process mining work is to then analyze which events occur during the creation and processing of an order, and which ones we want to happen, so which ones then lead to what we would call perfection, and which ones detract from that, which ones then cause an order to be imperfect. And then the two journeys that we then go through a little bit in parallel is how do we minimize the impact of imperfection? How do we minimize the occurrence of imperfection? And also, how do we make sure that when we do things, we do the perfect events, we do them optimally? So that's really the two flavors that we then work with. And so, yeah, how we bring focus to this and the stages that we go through in order to realize this. We start by understanding, right, what hurts, what's the pain. Now, when you then get a functional representative who says, right, I have this problem in my area, or maybe somebody in a country who performs an operational process, it then helps us to be able to, or it helps us to frame the conversations by knowing, right, what really does hurt, what actually, who is trying to do what, and when they are unable to do it, what is the impact? That's the pain. That's what we're looking to explore. And once we've got that pain, we then need to do a root cause. Okay, why is that occurring? And we also heard a little bit of this in the keynote, that we're going to have these other opportunities to do this. More traditionally, this is where you start doing 5 whys and fishbones and all of these things to really understand, right, why are these things going wrong? And the other thing to pay attention to here is that one pain point does not necessarily result, or is the result of a single root cause. And a single root cause is not necessarily only going to cause one pain. It's a many-to-many relationship, which is a fun one to then navigate and to keep track of. Then we need to figure out, okay, what do we do about it? What's the countermeasure? How do we resolve this root cause? And this can then be a change in behavior, it can be a change in work routine, it can be a change in solution. It's not always necessarily a change in solution. You don't have to jump there straight away. And the important aspect is, right, how do we follow up on this? How do we actually make sure that the pain that we had, does it still exist, or have we fixed one thing and caused something else? We've just moved pain along. That doesn't help. But by bringing together what we can do with process mining, this is how we can make sure that we're achieving the targets that we set ourselves. And ideally, we want to make sure that we build this into a continuous improvement loop. You're never done with process mining. Your processes will never be perfect. That's a utopian dream we will never reach. It's a continuous activity that we're going through here. And if we then look at a slightly more detailed version of the process that I actually showed you earlier, this is sort of a bit of a breakdown that we then use into slightly more points. But the thing I wanted to just demonstrate here is that actually when you map the pain on this, do a heat map, which is a word I'm not a huge fan of, but let's use it here. We can then see, right, this is where we perceive the pain hitting us. There's a lot when the customer orders, a lot when we fulfill the orders, a little bit of background elsewhere. But when we do our root cause analysis, that's not what the pattern looks like. We feel the pain, when things are being fulfilled, but is that really where the pain is being caused? And then the next step, when we're going to try and figure out, right, what are we going to do about this to make it better? Well, actually, the fixes or the countermeasures, that may have a different pattern still. Because one of the challenges that we also see, or have seen, in putting these countermeasures together is that you may have a perfect solution for something, but that may take 6, 9, 12 months to realize. But actually, there's a bit of a quick fix you can do here and now that can realize you 25% of the value. And you roadmap the various countermeasures to the root causes. And a bit of an example to show this pattern. The use case that I spoke about when I had the honor of presenting last year around our click and collect fail to pick up rate. So this is when customers ordered and then they fail to pick up. So we feel the pain here. When we then go through and analyze, right, why is that happening? What are the root causes of this? The big one that we targeted was when the customer is placing their order, are we communicating effectively? Are we working consistently in offering appointment slots for customers to collect their goods? That's at that part of the process. So it's an example where you feel the pain is not where you need to make the change and not the only place where you will feel the gain. That's important here. Now, being able to package these things, communicate them, we have then started putting together what we call our key insights report, because we need to be able to communicate this, broadcast this to the many people in our company. There you go. And this is an example, and for those of you who use Microsoft products, you might recognize Microsoft Sway. That's what we do this in. And what we then do with this report, we give people a bit of background and context because it may be the first time they're reading this report. But what we also want to make sure we can get to is not just a, look, here's a bunch of really fun and interesting stuff. It's, what can you do with this? And actually, these things are now going to change, because what we do down here, especially this last section, of a use case spotlight, where we actually then say, look, here is not just a problem that we saw and in investigation that we did, but here's what we did about it. Maybe in a certain store, in a certain country, to then try and promote that, that more people can gain benefit from it and that we can actually scale the result. Now, one of the things that, because I mentioned that we do the end-to-end sales order process, and it was actually a conversation that we had on stage with Will van der Aalst at Salona Stay Stockholm and Copenhagen. What is a process? And I'm actually going to borrow a slide from our hosts for this next part. Because with sales orders at the moment, we're doing that bit. That's the bit that we've currently consumed. That's what we're currently exploring. And then what we want to do to make sure that we can really round out that end-to-end process and get these things connected in a contextualized way that we can make sure that everyone works effectively together, is to then add these parts. And that's really the goal for the rest of our financial year, which is until August. That's sort of the next step that we're going to go for. Now, in order to do this, I have the honor and privilege of leading a COE of 6 people, where we do the ones in black, but in order to do the rest, what we really want to be able to do is scale this potential out to more people. And that's really what I want to talk with you about today. And so looking at our COE, looking at the offer that we have for process mining. Come on, you. There we go. So what is it we offer? What is it we're looking to be able to deliver here? Firstly, the process discovery and the visualization of the end-to-end. We're all familiar with this by now. This is what we do as process mining practitioners. And the question that we ask here is, what happened to what, when? That's our basic question whenever we're getting data for process mining, right? What happened is the activity, to what is the case ID, when is the timestamp. Simple stuff. And then going beyond this, because, okay, we can visualize what's happening, and then a little bit of enabling this operational reporting so that not only from a process perspective, but we can really see how is that operation sort of manifesting. And especially then this exploration and insights, like the key insight report and so on that we just saw. Because the difference here is we now add why did, what happened, to what, when. It's the evolution as we go. But the real differentiating aspect, and the bit that we really want to make sure that we can get to, is enable finding the actions to prevent the pain experienced in our operation. So to extend this question, why did, what happened, to what, when, and what should we do about it? Because if you can't answer this, who cares about this? No one wants a big list of reasons of how in trouble you are. We want, okay, how do we resolve these things? And so the other aspects of the process mining COE, the training, the enablement, and the support to enable process mining, because with this, I have my team that sit centrally. But what we want to be able to do is make sure that as many people as possible, as close to the business as possible, have this capability, have this capacity, have this skill. Once again, from the keynote earlier, right? And then building and maintaining a critical mass to enable this community, because so much interaction and so much benefit comes from conversation and communication. Once again, we heard that in the keynote with some of the things that are being that were spoken about today. How do we communicate with each other to really to learn from each other? It's nice if you can learn from somebody else's mistakes. You don't want to make every mistake yourself if you can avoid it, right? So that's a way to spread that. And in order to get as close as possible to the business and to the front line, what we then want to be able to do is take what our COE offers today and be able to spread that to the wider number of people. So what does the COE itself do? Now, a lot of these are the things that we've just discussed. So the creation of the technical platform, ingestion of the data, creation of the activity tables, all of that stuff. Enablement, so the training and the support, user access control, all of those basics. The internal relationships, because this needs to be placed within the context, so with risk, compliance, process ownership, finance, whatever other internal teams then need to be connected. Our external relationships, like with those lovely people standing up over there, that's all the Selenauts are over there, and then with our franchisor, because as I'm part of the primary franchisee of IKEA, so we need to connect with them. And also data science, because, I mean, we've heard those two lovely letters, AI, quite a bit today. Now, leveraging some of these more advanced data analytics processes, technologies, is a real potential for us here. It's actually something I spoke about if you've listened to the Mining Your Business podcast. I was episode 57 where we discussed a bit of this, really taking advantage of the increased technical capabilities. And then the service that we provide. So the COE provides the foundation to enable a service and the final ring will be our community that we interact with. So the service, the methodology, because once again, the technology alone doesn't get you there. Tooling, skills, behaviors. Tooling's great, but without the other two, where's it going to get you? So the methodology is around how do you get from analyses to insights to action. Business support, because some people in the community are going to need some help, so we need to be there to be the reference point. Analysis, insight, and outcome repository, and apologies, that should be a little bit further to the left. Because, once again, we need to be able to communicate our successes and our challenges. Network meeting, things like this, there's such a lot of value to this, to be able to interact. And so to do something similar internally is something that we're also looking at the right way to realize, the right way to structure. And this last one, full service offer, this is a bit contentious because we want as many people as close to the business to do this as possible. But there are lots of smaller countries or smaller projects that may not have the capacity to be able to do this. So is there something where the team that can actually deliver the concept not only delivers the concept as a manual, but actually delivers the concept and utilizes the concept? And now our community, the expectations of them. So firstly, enabling the improvements to meet the defined goals, This is going to be your senior stakeholder management, making sure that you've got the buy-in to be able to do the analyses, to be able to act upon the things that you find. It's very important. And then the steps of the process I mentioned earlier, the ideation, the analysis, the solutioning, and the adoption, and follow-up, because that then enables the continuous improvement. And this is what we're finding the right way to do, is be able to have the markets and have the units be self-sufficient in utilizing and delivering this. And now it's time for my conclusion slide, which is good because I had a big hand up just a couple of minutes ago to say I had 5 minutes left, so I should be okay. Now, this was a bit of a phrase that I coined when at Celonis Day, Stockholm and Copenhagen, because when we're working with the business, when we're understanding what's going on, when we're picking the things to work with, if you've got a motivated group, if there is momentum already in play to actually say this is something we want to work on or this is something we want to fix, like this sales order flow, the one that we're working with, when there's money involved, value, always important. And especially when it connects to your meaning, what it is that you do as a company. Because I know a lot of people talk about the S2P flows, but none of us have companies that exist in order to pay electricity bills and buy toilet paper. What we do is not the same as why we do what we do. And that's really then this meaning, when it's really close to what it is you do as a business. When you've got all four of those, that is such a powerful way to move. Secondly, ensure the exploration is focused on doing the right things while doing things right. We're often very good at things we shouldn't do, we're fantastic at. Things we should do, we are less fantastic at. So it's how do we really make sure, and it comes down to, because I know a lot of people talk about automation, and automation's a wonderful thing, but a slow manual rubbish process becoming a fast automated rubbish process doesn't really help you. What can you eliminate? What can you stop doing? And then simple. This is quite a big word for us because this is something that we use a lot in IKEA. IKEA. And the message comes up a lot, right? You're putting a presentation together for a C-suite member. It needs to be simple and simple messaging and so on. I love simple as a verb. I dislike it as a noun. Simple is a wonderful thing when it's an action. You're simplifying. You're going through the process of simplification. When someone just says simple, 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 you tend to get rid of too much of the detail and too much of the reality. So it's make things as simple as you can and no simpler. Or simple as they need to be, no simpler. And then my final point, and I did the same thing last year, because this is then, in 1976, our founder wrote a book that's sort of really core to our being. And so, yeah, the true IKEA spirit is built on our enthusiasm for our constant striving for renewal, from cost consciousness, from our readiness to take responsibility and help out, our humbleness in approaching our task, and from the simplicity of our way of doing things. And we must look at each other and inspire each other. And I was so proud of myself when I came up with those 4 M's. And then I read a 50-year-old book and realized someone else had already come up with it, which was annoying, humbling, but also quite rewarding, because maybe I'm in the right direction, right? Because our enthusiasm is the motivation, constant striving is momentum, cost consciousness is the money, everything else is the meaning. And that's how we combine all of this together. That's what I wanted to talk with you about today. Thank you very much. Any questions from the audience? Anything you'd like to know? We've got a microphone over here that will be flown around should you need. Right, I think you were first. Just, you're second. Yeah?
I think one of the most challenging things is data quality. Can you maybe give us some pointers as how you motivate people to make sure they care about the data they enter into systems, about yes, being an agent of change in getting people to understand this important point.
So, yeah, such a wonderful topic. And it's something that was a real core conversation last year for any of you who were here last year. And it's a phrase that, Michael, if you're still over there, because there's a very bright light there, it was a phrase that I coined last year of, don't wait until you have everything before you think you can get anything. Because no matter what the quality of your data is, there are things that you're going to be able to find. And ultimately, when you have an undeniable, unbiased vision of the truth that process mining gives you, you can then really go to someone and say, look, when you're misentering a customer's zip code here, these are all of the effects that you have downstream. And making sure that you've got that cause and effect to say, these 3 people have to make changes to fix the things you don't do right in the first place, and really be able to get that end-to-end connection. That's also why we focus on the big end-to-end, because it's something that does take time and effort to actually be able to say, this is a problem, this is causing a problem, but persistence, unfortunately, is the only word. Hopefully you'll have one conversation with one person and your fix will miraculously happen. I've never seen it yet, but continue to dream. We can hope it. And then there was a young lady down here. There. Keep going. 2, 1, there we go. Hello.
I have a loud voice. I don't need them. Thank you very much for the presentation, first of all. Nice to hear. I'm wondering, so you are 6 people in your COE full-time,
yes.
I assume?
Yes.
And how old is your COE? So when was it established, and how did you get to be 6 people?
Sure. And that original the process flow I was showing earlier, that's one of it's a transformation project initiative we have ongoing at the moment. So we brought the people in under the umbrella of that initiative, and now what we're doing is building this capability into a COE that we can then offer this to the rest of the business. So that bringing those people into the project has now been about 18 months ago. Actually then setting this up as a full-time COE, we started that journey about 6 months ago. And because the interesting thing is going to be, because those 6 will then become, whatever number that becomes, probably 10 to 12. I don't want a huge COE. The interesting thing is how that community is going to develop and how those people are going to be realized. And that's something we're starting to do with a few of our markets. And that's what I hope to present to you next year, because this is still a hope for the future. And then there was it you who had your? Exactly. Oh, you have the same question? In which case, back 2 rows.
Yeah, thanks, Tim. Lovely presentation. I'm Irfan from Zeiss, and we also have a COE. I'm wondering, you talk a lot about community. Have you enabled analysts in the business departments?
In 3 of our countries, yes. And then getting that training done, getting people producing their own analyses. Because the analyses is one bit. Quite honestly, if you can do an Excel pivot table, you should be able to do an analysis. The tricky part is making that matter. And the bit where we're investing the real time is getting that analysis to a conversation with the business departments and with the people who are really in the operation to drive the difference. Depending on which level, because sometimes you need to do something that's really quite intense and really quite flexible. We've not got to any of those stages yet. It's picking your battles.
Can you share about the challenges, like how to gain those analysts? Did you have to persuade management to free up capacities from the business departments?
Persuade is, yes. One of the things that we have had to do with some of our markets is use our own personal networks. You know, if one of the countries is the country that I'm from, which you may be able to sense from my accent. And so, you know, you've got that previous relationship that you can then say, if I was still here, this is what I'd want to be doing. I'm not here anymore, but this is something that you could really do with and you could really need. And it really is finding those early adopters. And if you've ever seen that Simon Sinek TED Talk where he talks about the whole early adopters, late adopters, resistors, and so on, finding those people Trying to get everybody straight away is very difficult. But finding those people who really want to be your champions and then grow organically, there's not going to be a click your fingers and it's working for everybody. And it's finding your way through and making that work. That's what's working for us.
Awesome, lovely. Thank you.
You're more than welcome. We got one all the way over there at the back. The microphone's got a long way to go. Cool.
Okay, thank you. First of all, thank you very much for the presentation. It has been great. And the question I would like to ask you is about the methodology you follow that has been explained very clear.
Mm-hmm.
You're thinking about a pain point, you analyze, you find the root cause, and then you solve it. The question is, based on your experience, when you find the root cause, typically you are able to eliminate the root cause, so it means that you can stop using Celonis for that pain point, or you need typically, in general, to keep using Celonis because you are able to detect and solve, but not eliminate.
As of yet, we've not found any examples of we fixed the thing and we never have to look at it again. Because in a complex end-to-end process, maybe, for example, there's a way in which you're going to deliver goods to a customer. Maybe there's a particular problem there. You fix that problem. But you still need to understand the whole end-to-end context to make sure that you haven't fixed a thing here and broken a thing here and changed customer behavior that means now this one's a problem. So at the moment, because I love the idea of communicating, look, we're doing this until we don't need it anymore and then we can get rid of it. And then everyone will say, okay, we'll keep using it until we don't need it. We're never going to not need it. I haven't seen any evidence that that future is within our grasp.
Okay, same experience. Thank you.
More than welcome. Now, I think in order for you to get a bit of refreshment and make sure you can get to the next session, we'll call it an end there. But if you want to get in touch, I've got a nice short name. I'm easy to find on LinkedIn. I don't have the beard. I do need to get a new photo. And be careful with which Tim Hills, because if you find a retired policeman, that's my father. But he'll point you in the right direction. Thank you for your time, everybody.